Welcome back, everyone. Who says you can't go home again, or at least go home to where you once lived? And with that in mind, back on Conklin and Company, a Conklin and Company Take 3 alum, is Jim Tankersley. Jim, it is great to see you.
It's great to be here, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. As we tape, as the show airs on Sunday, Jim was the keynote speaker at the Touchstone Awards, honorees for print and media journalism in town as part of the Press Club of Toledo. So thanks for coming in. It is great to see you. And you come at a time, Jim, when there's so much going on in Washington. Unbelievable time to be here right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually crazy in Washington. It's been a crazy several years in Washington, but this seems like the craziest. We have the government is completely shut down. We're a couple of weeks away from possibly defaulting on America's debts and creating a new global financial crisis. And no one seems to have any real idea of how we're going to get out of it.
Yeah, there's so much outrage and anger right now, and we did have that shooting in Washington on Thursday as well. So there's so many things to talk about. Jim left the Toledo Blade some 7 years ago, went to the Chicago Tribune, right?
Yes.
Then the National Journal, right?
Yes.
And now at the Washington Post, covering economic policy as it pertains to politics. So everything that is in your wheelhouse, you're doing right now.
Right. All sorts of things that I learned and perfected and really grew to enjoy writing about in Toledo. I now get paid to write about for a great newspaper, and it's really fun. I get to live in this intersection of politics and policy and write about not just what people are doing about the economy or not doing, frankly, in Washington, but about how that it really affects people's lives.
And let's talk about that. Unless we have some sort of miracle where Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate can get together and solve this shutdown by the time this program airs Sunday. Perhaps this shutdown will still be ongoing. And we have this impact on the economy. And while some say it's not catastrophic, what's happening in 2 weeks certainly could be. Can you speak to that?
Right, sure. Let's start at the back and then work forward. If we breach the debt ceiling and America has to start prioritizing who's going to get paid. Do people not get Social Security checks? Do we not pay the people who own U.S. bonds? This is going to cause very likely a financial panic, which could ripple all across the world. We've never seen anything like it. America has always been this bedrock of the global economy, and even in the last financial crisis, we had the full faith and credit of the United States government that was assumed to be good. If that's not the case anymore, you're going to see really, really bad things in the economy.
The last financial crisis, you're talking about the Great Recession,
the Great Recession,
08, 09. We had the shutdown that lasted 21 days back in the Clinton administration, some 3 weeks, 95 into 96. What about this one? I mean, how long can we go before we have serious problems with the shutdown?
Right. If we manage to raise the debt ceiling and just had a prolonged shutdown,
you get a stopgap.
It would be different than in the mid-90s, and partly because the economy was doing a lot better then than it's doing now. We have just this really slow growth, low gear economy that continues to not work for most Americans. People are still earning less today in the middle than they did at the end of the recession. And so this is going to start to really hurt those people because 800,000 federal workers are out of a job right now and not getting paid. That's a lot of money to pull out of the economy.
And you say you're seeing the impact in your neighborhood.
In my neighborhood, when I drop my son off at school in Northern Virginia, the big question that parents are shooting back to each other is, are you essential? Are you non-essential? These are a lot of federal workers, contractors. When they stop spending money, stop going out to eat, stop buying cars, or the housing market seizes up because people aren't able to do these sorts of transactions, and it's not just in Washington, it's in military towns across the country.
It's right here with the 180th Fighter Wing.
Right. And so because of it, when it becomes permanent after a couple of weeks and people start to really adjust their patterns of spending, then I think you really are going to see a big hit and some noticeable drops in the economy. The stock market's already treating it this way.
Yeah, it certainly has. And lowest point since as when we taped this on Thursday, the lowest point we've been in a year or so, or
yeah, I think that's about right. It's starting. We're starting to see the market say, hey, wait. Stop it, knock it off. But it usually takes a lot more of a reaction like this from the market to get a normal Congress to respond, and this is not a normal Congress.
All right, well, you see these men and women every day, and we've seen the rancor going back and forth. It's so ugly right now. There's so much frustration on Main Street and anger. When will we begin to see? There has to be compromise. This can't go on forever. People want Congress fired.
Right.
And Congress knows that, okay, people will not vote for me.
Right. Well,
so where will the rubber meet the road here?
So I think what's going to happen is enough members of Congress particularly the Republicans who run the House, are going to have to get enough pressure from their constituents, people who have been thus far supportive of the shutdown because they want to roll back Obamacare. Those members are going to have to
the
get
hard line, as the Obama administration calls them, the hard line.
Right, the folks who are digging in over Obamacare, they're going to have to get real pushback from their constituents, or the president's going to have to get so much pushback from the rest of the country saying,
isn't that happening already,
accountable.
We're not there yet?
We're not there yet. We're not at a point, I don't think, where enough members feel enough pain from their reflected from their constituents of real impacts of the shutdown, where they are willing to say, okay, I'm going to back off some principle and cut a deal here. And remember, there's a lot of deal making that's already happened before we've gotten to this point. Democrats wanted a more spending budget than they got now. They wanted to roll back some of these sequester cuts. They are now willing to accede to all of those cuts going through. The question will be, can Republicans get another concession on top of that, which would, in particular, if it affects Obamacare, really help to make their baseline supporters happier, and then everybody gets that feeling that you want at the end of a compromise where, like, I gave up more than I wanted to, but I at least got something.
At some point, there's going to have to be some compromise.
You would hope.
Have to be.
You would hope.
Have to be.
Yeah.
You know, in researching my guest for this segment, Jim Tankersley, I went back into some old C-SPAN videos, and you referred to yourself, this is when you were at the National Journal, Jim, that they called you Dr. Doom.
Right.
Right? And I'm thinking, where are we? Are you still Dr. Doom?
I am. So I'm surrounded by these other economic policy reporters at the Post, and I remain the most pessimistic of almost all of them. Because for one very simple reason, I keep talking to real people for whom this economy just doesn't feel like a recovery. It's still weird. It's been so long since it was 2009.
Housing starts up, home buying up, employment numbers are up. They're not good enough is what you're saying.
Still almost 12 million people in America are looking for a job and can't find one. And that doesn't count the millions of people who've dropped out of the labor force, stopped looking for work entirely. A third of the people who are looking for work have been out of work for more than 6 months. And if you are working, your income last year was flat. You didn't get a raise in inflation terms. And that was great. That was better than the last 4 years when your income had been going down. So I think until people really start to feel, hey, things are getting better and I'm doing better, not just not doing worse anymore. Until that happens, I don't think we're going to feel like this is a really sustained recovery.
And the raises that do happen these days seem to be so incremental.
Right.
That doesn't make a huge amount of difference. I hope you're wrong down the road. I
always hope I'm wrong.
You know,
yes.
Because it looks like we've got some significant challenges that lie ahead. But I appreciate you coming in. I know you're going to stick around for Take 3. You're keeping an eye on Toledo politics. What's going on?
Yeah, I read the Blade, man. That's what you have to do.
All right, you're going to stick around. Skylar Meadows will join us in just a minute. Take 3 on Conklin and Company with Jim Tankersley and Skylar right after this.